We have to repeal Obamacare, and it can be replaced, and it can be replaced with something much better for everybody. Let it be for everybody, but much better and much less expensive for people and for the government. And we can do it. So I've watched the politicians. I've dealt with them all my life. If you can't make a good deal with a politician, then there's something wrong with you. You're certainly not very good. We were very close. It was a very, very tight margin. We had no Democrat support. We had no votes from the Democrats. They weren't going to give us a single vote, so it's a very difficult thing to do. I've been saying for the last year and a half that the best thing we can do, politically speaking, is let Obamacare explode. It is exploding right now. It's many states have big problems. Almost all states have big problems. I was in Tennessee the other day, and they've lost half of their state in terms of an insurer. They have no insurer, and that's happening to many other places. I was in Kentucky the other day, and similar things are happening. So Obamacare is exploding. With no Democrat support, we couldn't quite get there. We're just a very small number of votes short in terms of getting our bill passed. A lot of people don't realize how good our bill was because they were viewing phase one, but when you add phase two, which was mostly the signings of Secretary Price, who's behind them, and you add phase three, which I think we would have gotten, it became a great bill. Premiums would have gone down, and it would have been very stable, it would have been very strong. But that's okay. But we were very, very close, and again, I think what will happen is Obamacare, unfortunately, will explode. It's going to have a very bad year. Last year, you had over 100% increases in various places. In Arizona, I understand it's going up very rapidly again, like it did last year. Last year was 116%. Many places, 50, 60, 70%. I guess it averaged, whatever the average was, very, very high. And this year should be much worse for Obamacare. So what would be really good, with no Democrat support, if the Democrats, when it explodes, which it will soon, if they got together with us and got a real health care bill, I'd be totally open to it, and I think that's going to happen. I think the losers are Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, because now they own Obamacare. They own it, 100% own it. And this is not a Republican health care. This is not anything but a Democrat health care. And they have Obamacare for a little while longer until it ceases to exist, which it will at some point in the near future.
Well, this is not the first time that President Trump has been tripped up by the written or unwritten rules of politics. I mean, remember, he lost a popular vote. His initial ban on travel from these Muslim countries. He lost his choice for labor secretary, his army secretary pick. I mean, so this is definitely not his first loss, but he did learn a lot about loyalty and who he can trust. It's very true.
But John, it's so hard to overstate how significant of a loss this is. I mean, the Republican base, the party, has been clamoring for this for 7 years. This has been their central campaign promise. The real ramifications, he's ready to move on. Donald Trump is ready to move on. The question is the Republican base ready to move on? Do they believe that it's time to give up on repealing and replacing Obamacare less than 3 months into a new administration? And if they can't ever do anything this Congress, which they probably won't, what will that mean for 2018, keeping control of the House? And now there are significant fears of keeping control of the Senate because the base could be depressed and may not come out to support them.
I mean, a lot of the policy in the health care repeal was in direct contradiction to what the president had said in terms of insurance for everybody. And then the endless and unsuccessful attempt to feed the Freedom Caucus, the most conservative, hard-right group in the Congress, not only didn't work, but it then alienated 24 moderates. So whether this means that the people who've been suspicious of Ryan, the Breitbart folks, are going to suggest that his speakership is endangered, I don't think we know that yet. But I think that he took a real hit this week.
Paul Ryan needs to step down as Speaker of the House. The reason? He failed to deliver the votes on his health care bill.
what?
I mean, so the President of the United States is giving a preview. Obviously, he knew what was going to be broadcast last evening. There's no question the relationship between the President and the Speaker was never very good. Now it's a fractured, but the reality is they have to work together, at least for the short term here. But in terms of lessons learned, you don't learn lessons by assigning blame. Even before this bill failed on Friday, starting Thursday evening, the White House was already saying, oh, it's Paul Ryan's fault, it's the Speaker's fault. The blame game up and down Pennsylvania Avenue on Friday was extraordinary.
But the question is, where do we go from here? Because the president, essentially, he said, look, Obamacare is going to explode this year. He uses explode, others use implode. He's the fire chief now. Yes, Obamacare was put in place in the previous administration, but you can't show up at a fire and say, oh, that one started under the last guy, I'm not going to put it out. Or can he?
In Health and Human Services Secretary Price, former congressman, you have perhaps the single most zealous opponent of the ACA. We've already seen what can happen. They pulled ads, TV ads, off the air at the time of open enrollment. Enrollment numbers went down. Why does that matter? Because if you don't get healthy younger people to sign up for various insurance, that means that the insurance companies are dealing with older, sicker people. That means insurance premiums go up. The federal government, the executive branch, can give states all kinds of leeway to tighten, for instance, Medicaid applications, who gets on. They can change how the subsidies work for low-income people who are otherwise faced with high deductibles and copays. So if the administration is looking to undermine Obamacare, they have the tools to do it. The question is, will Trump actually do what he said? Maybe I'll reach out to Democrats and we'll try to figure out a way to make it work. I wouldn't bet much at all on that prospect.
In districts where he got 60 and 70% of the vote, those House members said, Mr. President, you're great. I'm not going to give you my vote.
And that's one question I am told by a couple members of Congress that he would ask them, the President would ask them when they were inside the Oval Office, how much did I win your district by? How much did I win your district by? And they were sort of like, let's talk about the bill, Mr. President. Let's talk about the bill, Mr. President. He was not focused on the details here. But at the end of the day, the consequences of defying him in the short term appear to be not much. But it's a long game here. We don't know.
It's a long game. It's a long game. But this is the point I'm trying to figure out. What did he learn from this? Because you mentioned these meetings. One of the things we know from all the great reporting people have done in these meetings is the president would tell the members of the Freedom Caucus, conservative members who don't believe in a big federal government, who really want to repeal Obamacare. They're not all that interested in a federal role in replacing Obamacare. The president would say, I don't want to focus on the little, I'll say stuff. It's 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. He did not say stuff. I don't want to focus on that. You cannot pass something as complicated as health care and something that divides your party as much as something like health care, and tax reform is next, and then trade and all these, without focusing on the little stuff. That's his job.
Passed a bill in the House without any Democratic support. Why do you think you weren't able to craft a deal among the Republican Party?
Well, we were very close. We were just probably anywhere from 10 to 15 votes short. Could have even been closer than that. You'll never know because you never know how they vote. But in the end, I think we would have been 10 votes, maybe closer. But it's very hard to get almost 100%. You know, you're talking about a very, very large number of votes among any group. And we were very close to doing it. But when you get no votes from the other side, meaning the Democrats, it's really a difficult situation.
Will you reach out to Democrats now?
No, I think we have to let Obamacare go its way for a little while, and we'll see how things go. I'd love to see it do well, but it can't. I mean, it can't. And it's not a question of, gee, I hope it does well. I would love it to do well. I want great health care for the people of this nation. But it can't do well. It's imploding, and soon will explode. And it's not going to be pretty. So the Democrats don't want to see that. So they're going to reach out when they're ready. And whenever they're ready, we're ready. And I never said, I guess I'm here, 64 days? I never said repeal and replace Obamacare. You've all heard my speeches. I never said repeal it and replace it within 64 days. I have a long time. But I want to have a great health care bill and plan, and we will. It will happen, and it won't be in the very distant future. I really believe there'll be some Democrat support, and that'll happen, and it will be an even better bill. I think this was a very good bill. I think it will be even better the next time around. And I don't think that's going to be in too long a period of time.
The whole argument he made, I am the outsider, I am the deal cutter, I know how to get things done and cut through the morass of Washington, has clearly taken a hit. I think the second thing, although why this should have been a surprise to anybody, is Donald Trump, let me be blunt about this, simply doesn't care about the policy implications. It's about winning. It's about beating his enemies. It's about looking successful. So for the Republicans who are now saying, all right, we'll do tax cuts, we'll do infrastructure, how are they going to deal with a president who really isn't interested in the details of things like tax cuts and how we get infrastructure?